Hello to everyone. My name is NC Lightworker, and I am basically a light worker by trade. A light worker is someone who has received a calling from the Most High God and has been entrusted with the duty to light the pathway for God's people. I do not have any religious affiliation, nor am I affiliated with any group or organization. Also, I do not respond to any questions, comments, or emails because as a light worker, I'm only here to present the information. The ideas expressed in this commentary are from a conscious viewpoint. Thank you for tuning in, and let's get started. We live in a world of real and imaginary. I am a conscious person, which means that I am awake and I have a heightened sense of awareness. Therefore, I operate according to what is real. Unfortunately, the average person is not awake, they are sleepwalking. They have no real concept of reality because the reality they exist in is based off the imaginary. It's based within the matrix. We live in a world of real and imaginary. What is real is created by God. The imaginary, the matrix, was created by the enemy. We are the gods that walk this earth. The enemy has known our true identity for thousands of years. The enemy is weak and cannot kill you directly. The only way a god can be killed is by self-destruction. Essentially, you have to play an active role in your own demise. We live in a world of real and imaginary. No weapons formed against me shall prosper, because the only weapon that the enemy has is the imaginary. The enemy's weapons are psychological in nature, and its main objective is to convince you that the imaginary is real. This is done by the use of false terminology, imaginary concepts, and through orchestrated events. In this commentary, we are going to navigate through the matrix as it relates to the Civil War and slavery in America. Most people's view about slavery in America is mainly limited to the series of events that occurred in America only. I'm going to paint a broader picture of slavery in America as it relates to the world and the universe. Now, since we're talking about the universe, it's time to take it to the cosmos and cover some basic concepts in astrology. It is very important that you understand the following information because you're going to see how the events that occurred in history are directly tied to astrology. Everything in the universe functions on some type of cycle. You have the changing of the seasons, and Elton John sang about the circle of life in the movie Lion King. The Earth is cycling through the galaxy, and the galaxy is divided into 12 ages that correspond with the 12 signs of the zodiac. So we have the age of Leo, age of Capricorn, age of Cancer, so on and so forth. Just like the signs of the zodiac, each age has its own unique characteristics which relates to how mankind is going to be influenced on Earth. Do you know what age we're in? If not, then let me be the first to welcome you to the age of Aquarius. We have crossed over from the age of Pisces into the age of Aquarius. This is an absolutely amazing and critical time to be alive because we're going to continue to witness a series of events that are related to this transition. The purpose of movement through a cycle is to achieve and maintain balance. Anything that is aligned with the Most High God's divine order will be in balance. As humans, this is something that we all strive for. Balanced home and work life, balanced diet, etc. Have you ever heard the phrase necessary evil? Evil is indeed necessary. Good cannot exist without evil and vice versa. If you've never seen or experienced evil, then what is good will have no significance. Good would be considered a norm that has no real meaning or purpose behind it. The balance between good and evil occurs when we move into a new age. The Egyptian god Thoth directs the motion of the heavenly bodies, the planets, stars, moon, and sun, and serves as the mediating power between good and evil, ensuring that neither has a definite victory over the other. It's all about achieving and maintaining balance. So how long does an age last? There is no definite answer to this. Depending on who you're talking to and what school of thought they are from, an age can last anywhere from 2,000 to 2,500 years. According to the Moors, an age is equal to 2,166 years. But for the sake of this commentary, we're going to say that an age lasts for 2,000 years. Remember, in every age there is a changing of the guards, a shift in who has power and control on earth, and this is for the purpose of maintaining balance between good and evil. So who was in control in the previous age, the age of Pisces? Truth comes from making connections. The age of Pisces was dominated by evil. The 5th through the 15th centuries, the middle point of the age of Pisces, was known in history as the Middle Ages. The Middle Ages are also referred to as the medieval period. Truth can be found when you study the meaning of words. Medieval, having a quality as cruelty associated with the Middle Ages. Truth can be found within words. The words die, evil, devil, and the phrase me a devil is within the word medieval. The British monarchy, Christianity, and Islam were established during the age of Pisces. So what was occurring in history over 2,000 years ago during the beginning of the age of Pisces? The answer is the series of events that occurred that were related to the rise of the Roman Empire and the fall of the Egyptian dynasty. Egypt never regained power during the age of Pisces. However, there is beauty in knowing that history repeats itself. So far, we have discussed how the enemy's weapons work and a little bit of astrology. Now it's time to start the history lesson. FYI, the information covered in this video series cannot and will not be found in any of your history books. Truth comes from making connections. I think if we start a timeline, it will help put things into perspective. 1580. The imaginary concept of race was developed. This was discussed in detail in the Race Does Not Exist, The White Devil is Public Enemy #1 video. 1584. The first colonists arrived in America from England. 1604. The King James Version of the Bible was commissioned. 1607. The establishment of Jamestown, Virginia, the first English settlement in America. 1611. The King James Version of the Bible was completed and published. 1619. The beginning of slavery in America. Enslaved Africans arrived to Jamestown, Virginia. There is an invisible hand behind every movement. The people that financed and oversaw slavery in America are the same people that manufactured the Civil War, are the same people that created the Ku Klux Klan and the Civil Rights Movement of the 1960s. There is an invisible hand behind every movement. The enemy made sure they kept their hands clean at all times, meaning that the enemy never whipped a slave, never donned a white hood, and never burned a cross in someone's yard. The reason why is that the enemy did not live in the South. So let's add this event to our timeline. The Mayflower traveled from England and landed in Plymouth, Massachusetts in 1620. We live in a world of real and imaginary. So what false explanation does the history books give for the Pilgrims arriving in America? The answer is that history claims the Pilgrims arrived to America for the purpose of seeking religious freedom. We live in a world of real and imaginary. The Pilgrims conveniently arrived 1 year after the first enslaved Africans arrived in America. In actuality, the Pilgrims had the task of overseeing the establishment of America, of the New World. You can basically look at them as being upper management, so to speak. Also, the Mayflower Pilgrims, also known as the Blue Bloods, were blood relatives of King James. This was a way of keeping it all in the family, keeping it within the circle. There is a hierarchy to everything. We know that this is true because this can be observed in nature, especially in the animal kingdom. So I got a question for you. Within an organization, do the people in lower management have the same information and knowledge as those that are in upper management? No. Upper management makes the orders and lower management takes the orders and do as they are told. Remember, it was important that those in upper management were to never get their hands dirty. What they did was lure Europeans from poorer countries like Germany and Ireland with the prospect of wealth by becoming a plantation owner in America. This is why plantation owners in the Deep South were generally never of English descent like the Pilgrims. The plantation owners and the plantation overseers were considered to be lower management. They were the ones that did the dirty work, which allowed upper management in the North to financially benefit from slavery while keeping their hands clean. We live in a world of real and imaginary. Most people would be surprised at what the answer is. Slavery in America had nothing to do with money, and it certainly had nothing to do with race. Slavery in America had everything to do with the battle between good versus evil. This is the same battle that has been fought since the very beginning of time. The devils of the British monarchy have known our true identity as the gods that walk this earth. They knew that they had to devise a master plan because, astrologically speaking, they had only 400 years of freedom left under the age of Pisces. The Bible makes a direct reference to this. The book of Genesis, chapter 15, verse 13. Know of a surety that thy seed shall be a stranger in a strange land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them for 400 years. So let's add this to the timeline. Since the King James Version of the Bible was completed in the early 1600s, we're going to say that the 400-year countdown officially started in the year 1600. In this video series, we're going to examine the enemy's master plan and illustrate how this plan has changed throughout the course of history. But first, I will need to introduce you to Polly Puritan. Polly Puritan is our friend from the North, and she is going to explain the inner workings of the master plan in the hopes of convincing you that their master plan was designed to help Negroes. Polly Puritan, please tell the people the real reason why the Civil War was manufactured.
Hello, everyone. Well, according to our master plan, we had to implement the illusion of freedom. Now, we didn't actually want you to be free. Oh, heavens, no. God forbid that. We wanted to make sure you felt like you were free. But of course, this freedom had to be under our system of white supremacy. But before this could work, we had to, of course, remove the actual shackles from your people's hands and feet. So we had to create something big that will allow this to happen. So this is why we manufactured the Civil War.
We live in a world of real and imaginary. The main objective of the enemy's weapons is to convince you that the imaginary is real. The enemy's weapons are psychological in nature. Every man has the innate need to provide protection. So let's examine how the enemy was able to manipulate this. Before the start of the Civil War, in the North you had abolitionists informing the general public about the evils of slavery. This was achieved by widespread news publications and was illustrated in Uncle Tom's Cabin, a best-selling novel by Harriet Beecher Stowe. Public speeches were given that would feature former slaves that would give their first-hand account experience, as well as ministers that deemed slavery as being immoral and unchristian. Many men answered the call to take up arms to free and protect their enslaved brethren in the South. It is interesting to note that the abolitionist movement in the North was largely influenced by the Quakers. Since it was against their religion to take up arms, the Quakers could not join the Union Army. This allowed them to keep their hands clean. There was widespread concern, or propaganda if you will, about the efforts being made to end slavery in the South. The majority of white Southerners did not own slaves themselves. However, they either directly or indirectly benefited from slavery. This was purely economics because slavery and agriculture were big industries. Men joined the Confederate Army in an attempt to protect their way of life, which was directly tied with being able to provide for their families. This manipulation of the need to protect resulted in soldiers from the North and soldiers from the South self-destructing on the battlefield. Remember, the only way a god can be killed is by self-destruction. Both sides were operating in complete darkness, ignorant to the fact that there was never any real conflict, because the real enemy travels within the same circles. These circles have family, blood ties, and are tied by social affiliation. Truth comes from making connections. Confederate Commander General Robert E. Lee and Union Commander General Ulysses Grant were both of English descent. Both of their families arrived to America in the 1600s, and both were graduates of West Point Military Academy. General Robert E. Lee was related to the following presidents that were in office prior to the Civil War: Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, Zachary Taylor. General Ulysses Grant would later become the 18th President of the United States of America. So let's examine this further. The plantation owners, aka lower management, the ones that did the dirty work, used their personal wealth from slavery to build stately manors and to build the cities in the South. After the Civil War, they were financially ruined. Their families sold off their properties for a fraction of what it was worth. So who were they selling their properties to? The answer would be our friends from the North, of course. The plantation owners were merely pawns in the game. This is why some of the best and most expensive property in southern cities like Savannah and Charleston are currently owned by families that have a direct connection to the North. Well, looks like the first phase of the enemy's master plan went off without a hitch. Polly Puritan, please enlighten us on the second phase of the plan.
Hello again. Slavery is over now. Your people are free. Yay! Um, but not really. Now remember, the first part of our plan was to create the illusion of freedom. After the Civil War, we worked hard to establish historically black colleges in the South. The chains of slavery were basically placed on you mentally since we financed and controlled the curriculum at these institutions. But this was a good thing. It was important that we, your friends from the North, guided your education in the right direction. Now, we knew not every one of you gods, oh, I'm sorry, no, I meant to say we knew not every one of you Negroes was going to be able to attend one of our fine institutions. So we figured out a way to keep that segment of the population under control by keeping them in the same constant state of fear, the same fear that they experienced during slavery. In order to do this, well, we had to create the Ku Klux Klan. Sorry.
Truth comes from making connections. The end of the Civil War was marked by General Robert E. Lee surrendering to General Ulysses Grant on April 9, 1865 in Virginia. Several months later, Shaw University, the first historically black college in the South, was founded in North Carolina in December of 1865 by Henry Martin Tupper. Tupper served in the Union Army during the Civil War. Right next door, in the neighboring state of Tennessee, the Ku Klux Klan was founded in December of 1865 by Confederate Army officers. As you can imagine, tensions were high in the South after the Civil War ended. The violence enacted by the Ku Klux Klan was a classic case of misplaced anger. The purpose of the Klan's creation was twofold. The enemy used the Ku Klux Klan as a catalyst for diverting the anger of poor, uneducated white Southerners away from the Northerners that were carrying out the master plan in the South. Secondly, it created the racial climate that would stigmatize the South for many generations to come. The weapons that the enemy uses are psychological in nature. It specializes in having people to think out of context and act out of mind. Truth is always within plain sight. There is an invisible hand behind every movement. There was a lot going on in history during the year 1865. So let's go back to our timeline. Well, what do you know? Looks like the enemy only has 135 years of freedom left under the age of Pisces. Looks like it's time for somebody to go back to the drawing board. The beautiful thing about consciousness is that it will never force itself on you. You always have the option of going back to sleep at any time. The choice is yours. If the information in this post was able to wake up a handful of people, then my mission was accomplished. It is now your responsibility to stay awake, prepare, and continue connecting those dots. Please feel free to share this post. God bless and take care.